Welcome, everyone. My name is David Garza, and I am the Development Director for Engagement and Advancement here at Point Foundation. Thank you for joining us for this evening's Scholar Showcase. Tonight's discussion is going to be really interesting, I think, as it focuses on the transition from community college to four-year institutions. And this is something that's crucial for the scholars we support and for their long-term plans. Currently, 80% of our community college students make the transfer to a four-year college, and that's twice the national average, so quite successful with our program. Like our previous showcases, this evening is a special chance to hear directly from our scholars. With a showcase like this, our goal is to try to keep you and our other supporters connected to the work we're doing. Of course, the pandemic has kept us physically apart for over 2 years now, but we want to make sure that we're doing everything possible to keep all of us as connected as possible. Shortly, you'll be hearing from Point flagship scholars Andreas Copes and Emmanuel Faria, Point BIPOC scholar Pilar Garcia, and Point Community College scholar Jose Gambo. First, please allow me to introduce our moderator, Vanessa Watson. Point alum Vanessa Watson is a fashion engineer on a mission, connecting you to clothes that fit your personality and your bum. Vanessa and her younger sister were raised in rural New Jersey by their mother in a single parent home with tremendous support from their maternal extended family. Though resources were often scarce, access to and the pursuit of academia was a constant. Vanessa's undying passion for fashion led her to enroll at FIT, where she achieved first an associate's and then a bachelor's degree. First as one of the inaugural Point Community College scholars, and then as a Point flagship scholar. Vanessa is the founder of Unboxed, a platform that integrates fashion and technology, providing access to apparel that reflects who you see yourself to be without rules, boxes, or constraints. Welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with us tonight, and I'm glad to share the space with you all and to give you a chance to meet our scholars. I'll take this time to introduce our scholars. First, we have Andreas Copes. As a Point Community College scholar, Andreas attended the Community College of Philadelphia and graduated with highest honors and an associate's degree in mass media in the spring of 2020. They then transferred to Temple University, where they pursue a bachelor's degree in communication and journalism studies. Being an established student media personality, Andreas hosted a TV show at their community college. They pitched the idea for a queer TV magazine show to Temple's TV station. Andreas is now a host and co-producer of QT, Queer Temple, and their work is being recognized and used as educational material for media students. Now, a Point flagship scholar who will graduate this spring, Andreas hopes to work in broadcast media and maybe even create an independent, queer, intersectional, feminist media outlet. My kind of media. Next up, we have Emmanuel Faria. Emmanuel immigrated from Caracas, Venezuela to Miami, Florida to further his education. As a Point Community College scholar, he graduated with highest honors from the Honors College at Miami-Dade College. During this time, Emmanuel was also a Salzburg Global Citizenship Fellow in Austria and founder of the student-led literacy initiative that serves students in Miami, Malawi, and Ghana. Now, a Point flagship scholar at Stanford University, Manny is pursuing a BS in neurobiology and a minor in religious studies, following his dream of ultimately becoming a physician. When he is not reading or writing, Manny enjoys a sensible combination of mindfulness meditation, the occasional skydive, and most importantly, the latest episode of RuPaul's Drag Race. Hello, Manny. Next up, we have Jose Gamboa. Like Manny, Jose also grew up in Venezuela, a small coastal town called Catia La Mar. He went on to study political sciences at Universidad Central de Venezuela and to serve as youth outreach coordinator for then Venezuelan Congressman Juan Guaido. and as an activist for LGBT movement pro-inclusion. Unfortunately, due to this activism, Jose had to leave Venezuela due to political persecution and targeted harassment. After leaving Venezuela, Jose found a new home in the United States as a refugee. He has been living in the Central Florida area for the past 5 years, where he continues to work to achieve his dreams. Jose is currently a Point Community College scholar attending Seminole State College, where he looks to obtain his associate's degree and then transfer to the University of Central Florida to pursue a bachelor's degree in international relations. Howdy, Jose. Next up, we have Pilar Garcia. Pilar Garcia was raised in a rural conservative town in Tennessee. As a Point Community College scholar, they attended Columbia State Community College in Columbia, Tennessee, where they were a prominent member of Sigma Kappa Delta and Phi Theta Kappa. They also assisted in readying their college's GSA, PRISM, for the reopening following the restrictions of the COVID-19 pandemic. In the spring of 2021, Pilar graduated from Columbia State Community College with an Associate of Arts degree in English. They are now pursuing a bachelor's degree in English at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, as a Point BIPOC scholar. Hello, Pilar. So I'm glad you all are here today. I'm going to start with a general question for everyone. To start, I'll start with you, Andreas, because you're at the top of my screen. Why did you choose to attend community college?
First of all, thank you, Vanessa, for the introduction. That was lovely. I immigrated to the United States in 2017 from Germany, so I had this tag of being an immigrant attached to me, which kind of made it likely for me to go to a community college first. But I remember I wanted to go to a four-year university immediately. I went to an introduction kind of thing where they would tell me a little bit about it, and it was expensive. It was really expensive. I was not only that I would have attended a four-year university immediately, which would have made it expensive, but I was also considered an international student. And so I was not eligible to apply for financial aid, and I just didn't have the money to pay so much money. And then I thought about the community college here in Philadelphia and knew that some of the professors who are teaching at Temple University are also teaching at the community college here. And so I thought, well, why should I pay more money and get the same professors and the same education, and I could go to the community college? And that's where I decided to go to the community college first and got my degree from there. And I think it was one of the best decisions that I made.
Wonderful. I know that story very well. Finances definitely play a part in the choices that we make when it comes to our education. To you, Manny, the same question. Why did you choose to attend community college?
Totally. Thank you for the question, Vanessa. And I think I have a story very analogous to Andrea's. I was also an immigrant from Venezuela, and I did not speak English when I moved to the United States. So that also made high school a little rocky for me. So going to community college was a little bit less of a choice, but more so of my only option at that point. But also I knew that it would be a financially wise step to take. And I guess on a personal level, I also felt that it was a second chance and a second opportunity, because although my high school career was not perfect and I didn't glide through my classes, I did feel like I learned a lot. So it was a testing ground that I could build to kind of improve my academic prowess and create an academic portfolio that would lead me to transfer to an institution that I liked and felt like resonated with my values. And, you know, it happened that way. So that's why I ultimately decided to go to community college.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And Pilar, to you, the same question as well.
Yeah, thank you. Growing up, I always knew that I wanted to go into higher education, but being from a lower economic class, I didn't think that the four-year university experience would be able to suit my budget very similarly to everyone else. But luckily, Tennessee has a great program where you can attend community college at a decently low cost. So I chose to attend a community college to get my prerequisites out of the way. So when I was transferred to a four-year institution, I would be able to take classes in departments I was genuinely excited about.
Absolutely, a strong foundation. And to you, Jose, to round out this question.
Thank you, Vanessa. Well, it was a mix of things, but also much like Andreas and Manuel, it was a financial smart decision. When I moved to the US, I moved here alone. So I only relied on the income that I made while working, and I had to support myself, my family, but also paying for college. So it made the most sense going to community college. But also, in my case, I was already going to a university in Venezuela, and then I all of a sudden had to stop, pack up, and leave. And when you're already kind of adjusted to an academic regimen or the classes that you're taking, or even taking classes in Spanish, having to start from scratch while you already have a college experience in your mind, it's a shock. So for me, it made a lot of sense to go to community college because it made the transition much, much easier. And also a lot of community colleges, specifically, well, especially here in Florida, they deal with immigrants. They help immigrants get enrolled. They know how to deal with questions like work permit or DACA or things like that, where some other major or bigger universities might just have too much students that they might not have the time to get all that information. So they were good enough to give me the resources and the information that I needed to successfully get enrolled.
Absolutely. And I think a strong follow-up to that is in terms of resources. To you, Jose, how did you learn about the Point Community College Scholarship? And why did you choose to apply?
Well, that is actually one of the greatest things about Point. I was talking to a friend that he had gone through the process of getting lots of scholarships, and he was helping me find one that could take in applicants that weren't either DACA or permanent resident or citizen, because when you're a refugee, you're kind of in this like migratory limbo where until your refugee case is not approved, you have a work permit, you can study, you can go to work, but you don't really have any of those other statuses. And so other scholarships will be like, well, we need a FAFSA, information to see what's your federal aid. And like, well, I can't apply to FAFSA because they don't accept people in migratory limbo. And so that closed the door to a lot of other scholarships. And that's where Point, really came into help me, because you guys were some of the only scholarships that were actually taking applications from any type of immigration status.
It's wonderful to hear that there's a resource available to you. Pilar, being in Tennessee, did you find that you had access to learn about the Point Community Scholarship, and why did you apply?
I actually didn't learn about it until I think it was my second semester or maybe my third semester of community college, because my GSA was very small and wasn't active, and it only had a Facebook page. And one of the alums from my college was posting about Point Foundation, and I decided it wouldn't hurt to apply since I really needed financial funding. I didn't have a laptop, and we were nearly into the era of virtual learning, so it came at a really good time for me.
It's wonderful to hear. And for you, Manny, how did you learn about the Point Community College Scholarship?
Totally. So I think for me, I had a very experience that was very similar to Jose's. I was also in a migratory limbo. I was an international student, sort of, kind of. And it's really, really, really hard to find people that don't require the FAFSA, or they don't attach their scholarship to like having a green card. So I had a counselor in my community college that sent it to me. And she's like, oh, I think you would be a good fit. You should apply. And I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, holy grail. They don't require documentation. Go for it. And this was after the quarantine had already started. So I had a lot of time to work in the application. And lo and behold, one of the best decisions I've ever made.
And to you, Andreas, I imagine you may have had the same experience in finding the community college scholarship.
Yeah, it was actually similar to Pilar, that we started a work group with my LGBTQ club, and we wanted to gather resources for students who are LGBTQ plus to apply for specific scholarships. And when I came across Point, I thought, this aligns with my identity, and also I see this potential for personal growth in becoming a scholar from Point Foundation. which was true in the end. But I just thought that was the most I could get the most, not just financially, but also in terms of personal growth out of that scholarship.
Absolutely. I too experienced that sense of personal growth that occurs inside the Point family and with the access to the Point Community College scholarship. So that point definitely resonates for me. I'm going to switch a little bit and go to Pilar for this question. As a Point scholar who has made the transfer from a community college to a four-year institution, what piece of advice would you give to an incoming Point Community College scholar who plans to make the transition?
So one of the biggest shocks when I transferred was how big my campus was in comparison to my community college, especially since I was only in person for the first 3 weeks of college. So the biggest point I could give someone is take a map to campus, make sure that you are utilizing your university's website, you're downloading any apps or maps that they have available, you're plotting out your classes for the day. And now that I'm more familiar with my college, I have more access to a lot of spaces that are more comfortable to study in, to sit in while I have limbo in between those classes. And for academics specifically, since I think this is a problem a lot of students have, is talk to your professors, shoot them an email, ask for an extension, don't be scared. Even though it's jarring to be in a lecture hall with 200 other people, you just have to work up the courage to ask questions. It's your educational experience. And most of the time, professors love seeing students who are interested in the topics at hand and are wanting that extra help to succeed in the class.
Yes, I would echo that sentiment to say that in particular, as a student who may come from a different background and you might feel as though you are an anomaly in certain spaces, that you might not feel as though you want to talk to your professor or that they're going to like engage with you. I would definitely recommend to talk to them and to email them, just get to know them, because I would say personally, it's better for you to have formed a relationship before you ever need anything, then when you get to a point and something does occur, and then you need to ask for an extension or you're having difficulty understanding something. And then at that point, you haven't formed that relationship. So I definitely echo that sentiment of just reaching out and talking to your professors, even if it's just an email, it's answering questions, you're in a room with 200 people, like it's fine. But I think it's definitely beneficial for you as a student to stand out, to try and make those connections with your professors and the administrators that are on campus as well. So I definitely would echo that sentiment as well. To you, Manny, you went from community college to a very large institution. Do you have any tips for students who are transitioning from a community college scholar to a four-year institution? And what were some of your plans in making that transition?
Yeah, I mean, wow, I think there's a lot to say. I think the transition from community college to Stanford is quite a jump. And there's not a lot of transfer students here. The most that there's ever been is 40. So, and it's a large campus physically. And I think at first it could feel very intimidating. Like I remember one of my first classes, we had readings to do before class, like normal, and I just did them, got the main idea. And then I came to class and people had actually memorized lines from the text and they were quoting them verbatim. And I was so scared and intimidated by that. And it kind of got got me thinking, like, am I ready for this like level of academic rigor? But then little by little, and I think that was the first wall I hit in my transfer journey. And I was actually very optimistic coming in. I was like, oh, I'm gonna kill it. I worked so hard. This and the other. But then, I think we all have challenges. And part of it was giving me the grace to like, okay, I'm here to learn and I'm not there yet doesn't mean I can't get there. And I think I try to approach it with a bit of a growth mindset, but also kind of realizing that everyone is going through it. Like I realized that some of this kind of memorizing lines a little bit sometimes is morally posturing, and it kind of wanes off with time, and not everyone does that. So I think giving yourself like the time and the mental space to kind of play with the ropes a little bit, and definitely start when you transition with a lighter academic workload, and realize that probably the most important part of college is the relationships you foster. So if at any point your academics are taking a toll on your ability to like form meaningful connections or your mental health, I think there's a sign that maybe you should reevaluate the academic load that you're taking at once and take a step back for a little bit.
Absolutely. And to you, Jose, from having prior experience in higher ed and then going into community college, and in a way, I would imagine perhaps like relearning or having to redo coursework and environments. And now as you are looking to make that transition back into a four-year institution, you've gone a bit of both directions. Do you have any advice for folks who might be looking to make those transitions?
Yeah, I would say the main thing is to have an open mind, because some things will be very, very different. And sometimes when we, humans are creatures of habit, we get into doing things a certain way, studying things a certain way, getting used to a certain standard of academia. So when you make that transition, if you don't have an open mind about it, it can be quite a shock. And so, for example, for me, going over from college in Venezuela, where you don't have textbooks because, there's no food and medicine. So who has money for textbooks? But you have like paper guides that you just go to a printer and get, and then all of a sudden you have to, get a certain edition of a book, and then it has to have an online code and all this stuff. And so the first semester I was like going crazy, like, what is all of this? This is too advanced for me. But if you have an open mind about it, then things start to get easier. And then the second thing that I would say is to start doing the research early and ask for help, because sometimes, especially with major universities, things can be a little bit bureaucratic, and so you have to do things well in advance. But also asking for help with connections that you've made, if you know people that are going to the same school, or people that may have a similar experience that you did. Because that was one of the main challenges for me, was that moving here, I of course knew no one. So then having to start and applying for college, I didn't know what to expect with admissions, what to expect with, what they ask when you have to sign up for classes. So taking the time to maybe ask around and look for help, even if it can be a friend, it can be someone that you know professionally or that you have a minor connection with. But if you can ask them about their college experience and see if they can guide you or give you advice, that also goes a long way.
Absolutely. And to you, Andreas, coming in Philly and then going into Temple, a large institution still in the city, what was your experience like in that transition from community college to a four-year institution?
Yeah, I would say my first advice is to try not to transfer during a global pandemic, because I thought that was not really cool. However, I was really lucky because it was really important for me to make connections, specifically LGBTQ related, at Temple University, even before I transferred. So I attended their LGBTQ club meetings before I had these connections. And so then when I transferred into Zoom University, I would say, in 2020, I was immediately part of the LGBTQ club there. I stepped up and became an e-board member. So I had immediately this connection, and it helped me even in a very isolated, in very isolated circumstances, to form some sort of camaraderie and just an idea of LGBTQ togetherness and empowerment. And so I would suggest, if you can, try to make connections even before you transfer, and try to find the LGBTQ specific resources at that institution that you want to transfer into.
Absolutely. And I'm going to stick with you, Andreas, to kind of go a step back in terms of considering the lead to your transfer process. did you have resources as a community college scholar from your community college that aided you in your transfer process? And perhaps also, did you know where you wanted to go in that transfer process?
Yeah, so my community college has a transfer program with several institutions. Temple University is one of them. I wanted to have an open mind in terms of where I wanted to transfer, while Temple University was kind of my number one because it is considered one of the best schools in media and communication. I also was thinking about the University of Pennsylvania just because it's also in Philadelphia. I knew that I wanted to stay in Philadelphia because my partner is also here. And I think the tipping point was that a staff member from Point actually knew the head of the communications department. And so he, at that time, Jonathan, connected me and Scott Gradson, who is the head of communication at Temple University. And we met even before I transferred. And I will never forget, I stepped into this office of Dr. Scott Gradson, and it's like stepping into Alice in Wonderland. You have, I just felt really welcomed and seen as a person as well. And so that was the moment when I knew I'm going to transfer into Temple University. And 2 years later, I can say that was also the right decision.
Marvelous, especially since graduation is right around the corner.
Oh my God, yeah.
You're making great waves. To you, Manny, as a Point Community College scholar, what sort of resources did you have as a scholar to prepare you for the transition?
Totally. So I think there are two elements of resources. I think the one is the literal providing of help, but also like the second one I think would note like the psychological support of knowing that Point has got you and they're walking you through these steps. So for community college scholars, they do a symposium, which for me was on Zoom. And I actually thought that it ended up being even more helpful because it was on Zoom, since we got to do a lot more different kinds of activities, and we got to meet like with the financial aid officers at USC, and we had affiliates of Point helping us with our college essays and proofreading. It was really easy to like walk through every stage. And that also kind of got me started earlier, which was beneficial for me because I applied to a lot of schools. So it was really good in terms of timeline wise. But also I think it's really, really nice knowing that so many Point scholars have made it and been able to transfer successfully. And then this kind of just gives you the ability to take a breath and realize like, if they did it, I can do it too. We're all in this together. And if you need anything, you could always shoot an email to anyone in Point and they would definitely figure something out for you. So I think having that support makes a mental difference, and it's a tool, a very important tool to be able to be academically successful, I would say.
Absolutely. I would say a sentiment that I have in parallel is that when I was a community college scholar, our symposium was in person. It was before all of the shenanigans began. But anyway, that it was in person, and there was an alum there, Elias, and I just remember their talk and feeling like they get it. This makes sense. I'm not alone in this process. There are a bunch of scholars here like me who are taking this journey, and that it felt more tangible, but it also felt like there was more possibility of what the future could look like as well. Though I may have had a plan of this is what I'm going to do, I just think that the symposium and the support and camaraderie reinforced that and definitely helped me in the right direction. To you, Manny, I see your hand up.
Yes. So if I could add, I think something that a resource I had that I wish I would have utilized more is the other point scholars that have already transferred, not just in terms of hearing them and knowing that they've done it, but if you're applying to a particular school, I mean, I'll volunteer myself. If you want to apply to Stanford, like reach out. I think people are really happy to help. And now that I am at Stanford, my next step is medical school, and I am in contact with the medical students that are point scholars at Stanford. So I just think that sending an email, it's really easy to facilitate communication with other scholars. It's also a huge resource. Having like a point of contact in the university, like Andrea's had an experience that kind of resonated with that, that if you could make that connection, I think that would be very helpful.
Absolutely. It's a very strong community. And I think that there is a desire to support and to facilitate the journey for others, knowing what you have already experienced in it. And that comes back as I'm here, an alum moderating this conversation. Like, my action of doing that is not an anomaly. That is a practice that happens with many alums inside of the community. That is the Point Foundation. To you, Pilar, what resources were available to you that you found helpful as a community college scholar when you were preparing to transfer?
Yeah, so one of the best things about Point to me was, I'll start out by saying I'm not a first generation student. However, my mother is deaf, and it took her about 8 years to get her bachelor's degree. So I was really terrified about finances. And as a community college scholar, we had a lot of virtual seminars about things that we were interested in. And so I attended a lot of the ones about finances and student loans. So I felt more prepared when I transferred to a four-year university that I would be able to take out loans and understand what everything meant, that I'm not just signing contracts and putting myself in unnecessary debt. And I didn't have anyone to ask these questions to in any aspect of my life. So having some mentors from the Point Foundation was really great for me, having these financial mentors and people to ask about their educational experiences, financing options. That really helped me move forward in my process.
Absolutely. And to you, Jose, as a scholar now preparing for the transfer process, what has your experience been like?
I would say that the experience itself it can be daunting at times. But one of the things that really helped me be reassured goes to a little bit of what everyone was saying. So having a mentor from the Point Foundation. So my mentor, Daniel, which is actually pretty funny, when we were talking about, we're going to find you a mentor that is very specific to your area. So international relations, politics, who also happens to be an immigrant, who also happens to speak Spanish. So that was a great resource for me because it was someone that I could share not only cultural experiences, but if you're a poli-sci or international student or international relations student, you may know that there's this kind of crisis where they're both pretty similar and you don't know which one you want to go for. And then within themselves, there's like different subsets. So I could do poli-sci, but more focused on international side, but I could do international relations and do stuff local with nonprofits and stuff like that. And having someone that went through a similar career path where he told me, at your age, I also had no idea what I was going to do. And there are many different career paths. And unlike, things like medicine or science, when if you're a doctor, you kind of know what the guideline is for what you want to do, right? You're helping people medically, etc. But for poli-sci and international relations, sometimes it's very ambiguous because you're reading here how to, studying philosophies and political systems. Some people might think, what's the use in that? Or what's going to be the practical use for a profession in that? So having someone that went through a similar uncertainty, a similar career path, and ended up working in what he wanted and what he loves to do, that really helped me set my mind at ease when making the selection process for what major I was going to go into. And that in and of itself made me a lot more calm into completing the transfer process.
That sounds fantastic. I would say in this climate, we can use all of the international relations and poli-sci minds that we can take. So yay. To you, Manuel, I'm wondering, what was your favorite part of being a Point Community College Scholar?
Oh, I actually have a good answer for this. It was actually like the orientation, believe it or not, the first orientation. I remember Jonathan was running it at the point. He was like the person that had interviewed me. I kind of knew him, but kind of not. And I remember him saying like, hey, take it easy, this, that, and the other. For some people, this is gonna be the first time in their life that they're in a room that's filled only by queer people. And then I was like, oh my God, that's me. That's me. And I had never experienced that before. And I remember like him making like a small side comment about like his husband. And I was like, oh my God, he said that out loud. That is so uncanny. Like, I don't know. I just kind of felt, it felt so, I felt like my gayness just got real. Like, I don't know how else to say it, but it was like a very nice feeling right from the get-go that like you wouldn't, maybe you would want a utilitarian answer, but I think that like quick burst of belonging, I just think meant so much to me and kind of changed because I was just expecting more so like the scholarship pecuniary aspects of it, but this kind of what got me a taste of like there's much more than the money behind Point.
Absolutely. I love that answer. Pilar, over to you. What was your favorite part of being a community college scholar?
Yes, a very similar answer because it's definitely the community, especially for me who grew up in a very rural southern area for most of my college experience and all of my life, really. It was really hard for me to find people who had been through the same experiences or were making the same transition as queer students. The community and the seminars, getting to hear other scholars' personal experiences, it all meant so much to me. It made me feel not alone, but just the community that you receive after being integrated into Point Foundation is phenomenal.
Second, definitely echo that sentiment. To you, Andreas.
Point became not just a community to personally me, but a family. And I have to really hold myself together to not start crying because I'm super emotionally attached to Point Foundation. And I remember when I went to the Point Foundation Community College Symposium at the University of Southern California, that was when I met those people there. We grew together during that weekend and we're still in touch. And I know that I can, even though we're all around the country, I can count on those people. Or Vanessa, when we met, like yesterday, when we jumped on the call, it was like, we have just met, we've just seen each other yesterday. There's this idea of, I can count on you and you can count on me. I can come to New York and we can have a coffee, or you can come to Philly and we can have a cheesesteak or something like that. So it's just, and it's very important for me because I left my birth family behind and I found this chosen family within the Point Scholars, and I'm super grateful for that. And now I start crying.
Absolutely, yes. You can have coffee in New York at any time. And to you, Jose, your favorite part of being a Point Community College Scholar?
Well, I'm gonna cheat here, and it's a two-part answer. So first, like everyone is saying, the community, of course, has been amazing. To know that there are other people who are successful, who have thrived, who are unapologetically themselves, and we're out there making change and working hard. That really sets a motivational fire for everyone when you're kind of, maybe having self-doubts or thinking, am I up for this challenge? You see these kinds of people in the community and that motivates you. That for one, and also because I really want to shine a light on this, going back to the mentorship program, and it kind of correlates to building community. For me, the coolest moment has been my mentor, Daniel, connected me with someone who actually works at the UN because he wanted me to get to know people and things that I wanted to do. And so I started talking to her and she's like, oh yeah, I do peacekeeping missions in Africa. And I'm here like, this is what I used to do when I was faking at Model UN. Like, oh my God, like I'm so excited. And so getting to know other people who are involved and who are engaged, but also making those connections that, are, never know in the future can help us with employment, or if you need to visit Philly or New York, you're all welcome in Orlando, by the way, if you want to go to Disney. Those relationships really matter. And I think that goes to the core of what Point Foundation is and what has been the best for me.
Absolutely. I will echo that. My cohort as a flagship scholar, we are all still connected. So it's very similar. It's a relationship and a family group unit that we have as a chosen family. And you are welcome in New York. Everybody is welcome to New York. Come on up. So I would say for you all, I'm going to start with you, Pilar. Why did you choose to reapply for the BIPOC scholarship after completing your community college scholarship?
Yeah, I feel like also saying you're welcome to Tennessee. I don't know what we're gonna do, ride a horse or something, but
I'm from Tennessee. Well, I'm not from Tennessee. My family's from Memphis, but we could talk about that later.
We'll talk.
Yeah.
I chose to reapply as a BIPOC scholar because it fits my goals and academic inspirations. One of the biggest things about being queer, especially where I'm from, is how predominantly white the community is and how it can be a bit taxing at times. So when I heard about the BIPOC scholarship opportunity, I hopped onto the application as soon as it was open. It's been amazing to meet with other BIPOC scholars and getting to know everyone on social media, listening to their experiences with mental health and topic of queer students of color that we don't really get to express with everyone else. I love the focus on being a BIPOC scholar and how many identities are represented within us.
That is fantastic. To you, Andreas, your transition from community college to the flagship scholarship.
Yeah, so on one hand, for me, it was, of course, the financial aspect, because a four-year institution is not as, in quotation marks, cheap as going to a community college. So there was that aspect. But I also specifically remember how I compared applying or reapplying to Point with the COVID vaccine, that I felt like I needed that second shot, that I needed this reassurance that someone is believing in my journey, and someone is so much believing in my journey that they want to financially also invest, and with a mentor invest in my journey. And yeah, then I reapplied, and I was reassured that I'm on the right track because I was born this way. No, that's Lady Gaga.
Absolutely. And to you, Manuel, also in the flagship scholarship program now, your choice why to apply, and perhaps I, as somebody who's also in flagship, I know it's a bit rigorous to do flagship, and perhaps touch on like the value of taking that leap and going and applying for the flagship scholarship.
Yeah, totally. So I think my reasons are very analogous to Andrea's. I also kind of felt like 2 years of online points is not enough. I wanted more. I felt like I could grow more. I had really grown attached to the people. And I remember distinctly Tanner, who was my mentor at the time, my Point mentor. He had kind of been like hyping me up for a long time. He's like, you should apply, you should apply, you should apply, this and the other. And I was like, okay, let's do this. And I applied, ended up going really well. I will say the application is definitely, it's a leap, like you said, because it's much more robust. It's longer. There's many rounds. But I do think that the expectations are merited, and you definitely get a lot of help and a lot of resources as a flagship scholar. So for anyone that's thinking about it, I think that it's 100% worth pursuing. And that I find is in generally true for the transfer application, but as well as the Point application, that you get to learn a lot about yourself. You know, seldom in modern times do we get to sit down. And I actually started, doing a gratitude journal every night. But before that, I think seldom do we get to sit and just like reflect about our lives. Like, what does my queerness mean to me? How did this come about? And I think that process itself, it's very informative to you. So even if you end up not receiving the scholarship this year, I think going with the mindset that you will learn something no matter what, it's really enriching. And once you make it, it's like the garden of knowledge of keeps growing and growing and growing. So that's beautiful to be able to be a part of.
It certainly is. And to echo that sentiment of even if you don't make it, that there's value in trying and applying. I myself, for the flagship, applied 3 times and did not get it, and finally got it on the 4th try. And each time, I would say for myself, the application, when I got to the 4th one, having gone through the others, I remember reading back and looking at some of my answers and being like, I can see why this was a bit surface and this has gone deeper. And now this is showing more of who I am and why Point would want to engage in this reciprocal relationship of investing in me and what I'm going to then bring into the Point community as well. So absolutely, I echo that sentiment of it's a bit of soul searching, but it's a good excavation to take on. And so I'm going to pose this final question to everyone. Jose, I will start with you. What are your post-graduation plans? Where are we off to next?
Oof. Well, so, right now I'm about to graduate from Seminole State on May the 2nd. So that's very exciting for me. Of course, I'll be going over to UCF to do international studies. And hopefully in the future, I would really like to work somewhere where I can promote human rights. I think that having living through the experience of having those taken away, or just the fact that they were threatened with every day, has really pushed me to wanting to do more for my community, whether that's if you're an immigrant, if you're Latino, if you are LGBTQ. So hopefully after UCF, that will be where I'll be heading off to. And also, of course, doing advocacy in my community.
Marvelous. Pilar, over to you.
Okay, so I've still got a year before I graduate, but I'm actually going to be applying to the MFA program here at the University of Tennessee for poetry. I've gotten to experience the world of poetry during my time here at UTK, and I've fallen head over heels for this program and the people I've met. I'm constantly inspired by knowing the world of poetry and how colonial it can be, meeting other Indigenous poets. I've met Joy Harjo and Elise Passion, being able to uplift other queer poets, other poets of color. It's been amazing. So I'm really looking forward to pursuing a career in poetry and getting my chapbook published, teaching classes, going to writing retreats. Really excited for the future.
Sky's the limit. And to you, Manuel.
Well, I'm not graduating until next year. I'll tell you that this summer I'll be first working in the United Nations in Switzerland, doing mental health policy and investment cases. And then I'm doing a human and planetary health healing intensive kind of entrepreneurship program in Israel. And after that, I'll graduate next year. God knows what is out there. I think I want to enter the startup space. So take that as you will. If you have any ideas, let me know.
I will keep you posted. How about folks' health?
Yes.
Yes. And to you, Andreas.
I want to establish myself as a journalist while also queering up the newsrooms and bringing my my layers of identity into the newsroom to make sure that parts of my identity are also seen in the news, because I think that is a problem that we see in so many newsrooms, that it's very cis, it's very white, and it's very straight. So just my presence is a form of resistance in those newsrooms. And then from there, once I have this establishment, once I'm strong enough I'm quoting all these like share and whatever. Once I'm strong enough, I want to establish a media outlet with, as you said at the very beginning, with a focus on intersectionality. Yeah, I always quote it, or I always tell it like it should be the Miss Magazine of Philadelphia.
I can't wait to see
Ambitious,
it.
I know.
That's what we're here for. Thank you to all of you for being so candid and sharing with us. And David, I will turn it over to you for closing remarks.
Thank you. Wow. I just want to say thank you so much to Andreas, Manny, Pilar, and Jose for sharing your stories and sharing your thoughts, but especially for speaking tonight, not just from your very advanced brains, but also from your hearts. Hearing you speak, hearing your wisdom, hearing your humor, it's just so moving and makes me really impatient for the moment when we can all gather in person again and just share more of these stories together. So thank you so much for sharing so much of yourselves. And thank you, of course, to Vanessa Watson for also sharing your own story and for moderating this evening's discussion so perfectly. Thank you. Now, for everyone who's watching this discussion, I just want to give a reminder that your support is incredibly important to the work we're doing. This academic year, we're supporting the largest group of Point Scholars ever at once, 403 LGBTQ students from across the country, which is amazing. We're also currently deep into the selections process for our next class of scholars, which will be announced in June. So please be sure to follow us on social media to learn more about our scholars and our alums by searching @Point Foundation for any of the social media channels. And if you'd like to make a contribution to support our work, please go to pointfoundation.org/donate. Since I'm in development, I'll say that again, pointfoundation.org/donate. With that, I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming tonight. Thank you for your support and have a wonderful night.